In the late 1990s, Japanese anime was huge. From Cartoon Network's Toonami block, to Kids WB, to Fox Kids, it was everywhere. Even Disney got in on it with their dubs of Studio Ghibli films like Kiki's Delivery Service and Princess Mononoke. And one of the most popular series airing at the time was a little show called Digimon. Inspired by a digital pet toy that was basically the boys' version of Tamagotchi, in 1999, Toei Animation produced a 20-minute film called Digimon Adventure. Originally, that one film was all they were going to do, but the studio was so impressed with how it turned out that they decided to make a full-blown series and release the film theatrically as a pilot for it. Saban Entertainment, who had previously become famous for the Power Rangers franchise, saw something special in the show that they thought would translate well for an American audience, and before it had even finished airing in Japan, it debuted on Fox Kids to immediate success, and a new franchise was born that continues to this day. Like many successful TV cartoons from that era, it was accompanied by a big screen, big budget, feature-length major motion picture called simply Digimon the Movie. And in those days, when the internet was in its infancy and all we really had to go on were TV ads and magazine articles, it looked awesome. Just look at the trailer for it.
The movie event you've been waiting for is coming to theaters this fall.
All right!
Digimon the Movie. On October 6th,
Ty, what's happening?
a digivirus will infect the internet
Diaboromon?
and wage the ultimate battle.
You'll never stop me.
Fox Kids presents
Is this information superhighway ever rest stop? I've gotta go potty! Just hold it!
an adventure too big for television,
Watch out!
where a new team of Digidestined will unite
It's all up to you, Digidestined.
with stronger, more powerful Digivolutions
The Digimon are combining as one! They're Digivolving together!
to face their greatest challenge yet.
Together we'll squash that bug! Go get him!
Take a journey so extreme, it can only be experienced on the big screen.
He's Digivolving too fast!
Hurry, we're running out of time!
7,
Come on!
6, 5, 4,
They're multiplying!
3, 2, 1.
Awesome!
More juice, Izzy? I just squeezed some onions.
Digimon the Movie. Coming to theaters this October. To get the inside scoop from the Digiworld, log on to DigimonMovie.com.
Holy shit, wow! I mean, the Pokemon movies were good, but this looked amazing! Little did we know, it was actually 3 movies in one. Something a lot of people might not be aware of is that it's common for Japanese cartoons to spin off short films that aren't quite feature-length, and then show 2 or 3 of them back-to-back to make a feature-length program. The show's American producer Jeff Nimoy, who also did the voice of Tentomon among other characters, had originally planned on combining the first 2 Japanese Digimon films to make a movie, and then releasing the longer third film separately as a second movie, but the Fox executives vetoed that idea and forced him to include all 3. Naturally, they weren't going to be able to release a 2-hour film, so Nimoy and his crew had no choice but to severely edit the third film and then come up with a somewhat convoluted backstory to make it all work. So many changes were made as a result of this that the Screen Actors Guild said that it no longer counted as a dub and demanded that the actors be paid the same as if it were a fully original movie. So with all of that in mind, how did they do? Is it an unwatchable mess as many people claim? Or were they actually able to make something coherent out of it? And how does it hold up after 15 years? Let's check it out. The movie begins, oddly enough, with a short film featuring characters from another Fox Kids show called Angela Anaconda. Yeah, I never watched that show either. It's not a terrible short, but it's just bizarre. You're given no context on who these characters are, and the animation is just plain weird. Was this show even popular at the time? At all? If it was, I certainly wasn't aware of it. Anyway, soon enough, the short is over and the real movie begins with a rap. A bad rap. And yet, as bad as it is, there's something oddly charming about it, and it does actually fit the tone of the show, at least as we knew it.
Who says there's no such thing as monsters?
Alright! Now that's more like it! This is what we came to see!
You're never quite the same after you meet your first Digimon.
After teasing us with that bit of action, the movie's first segment starts off with some exposition to set up the reworked narrative before transitioning to an adaptation of the original pilot film. It's not bad per se, the dialogue and voice acting are okay, and the plot makes sense, but it definitely suffers from being released after the series had already aired. Seeing as how the TV series was very serialized, it would have made far more sense to dub this film first and tack it on at the beginning as the American show's first episode, and just ignore the difference in animation style. It works well enough as it is, but it would have been better if they didn't have to tie it in with the other two stories. Moving on, we come to the film's centerpiece and the story they based the entire marketing campaign around. Known in Japan as Children's War Game, the second segment takes place about a year after the end of the show's first season, and was meant to bridge the gap between it and the second season. It begins with Izzy discovering a Digimon egg hatching on the internet, and as he watches it grow, he quickly realizes that it's not friendly and could pose a serious threat to the world's communication networks. He and Tai reconnect with their Digimon partners and attempt to stop it, but are thoroughly trounced in the first round. When they get a hold of Matt and TK and try again, this new Digimon, known as Diaboromon, launches a nuclear missile at Japan, and it becomes a literal race against the clock to find a way to defeat it before the missile hits. Fox was banking on this story to sell the movie, and they were completely correct. It's funny and intense in all the right places, and provides a perfect epilogue to the original series, tying up loose ends and giving the show the send-off it deserved. If there were no other seasons and the series had ended on this note, I would have been absolutely satisfied with that. Unfortunately, the third segment suffers the most in adaptation, primarily because by being forced to include it here against their opposition to that, the producers had to cut more than half the movie out to make it fit. For what it's worth, I do think they did the best they could under the circumstances, but it's completely obvious to any viewer that large portions of the plot are simply missing. Still, looking at what is here, it's not quite as bad as other reviewers have made it out to be. There are a lot of genuinely funny lines, the interactions between Davis and Willis are well written, and the action scenes are as good as you would expect for Digimon. Not quite as spectacular as the previous segment, but not bad either. You get the sense that if they had to massacre it, they at least tried to save the best parts. If you can track down a subtitled version of the third film called Hurricane Touchdown: The Golden Digimentals, I would recommend doing so to see the parts that are missing from this version. So what grade would I give this? Well, it depends. If we were talking about just the first two segments like Jeff Nimoy wanted, I would give it 4 stars out of 5. But, since we have to think about the third segment too, I have to knock it down a bit to 3 stars. It's nowhere near as bad as a lot of people say it is, and I would genuinely recommend it for the second segment alone. But as a whole, it's only average, I'm sorry to say. After this, Saban wisely decided not to try for another big screen release, and all future Digimon films were aired separately as standalone TV specials. With Toei Animation celebrating the 15th anniversary of the franchise, and a new series featuring the original characters coming in 2015, now is the perfect time to watch this movie and make up your own mind about it. Just because somebody else hated it doesn't mean you will, right? Until next time, film nerds.
無限大な夢の後の 何もない世の中じゃそうさ愛しい思いも負けそうになるけど静しかしない道だらけの頼りない翼でもきっと飛べるさ、oh